The first light of dawn spilled like honey across the African plains. The golden grass shimmered with dew, each blade glinting as if the earth itself had caught fire from the rising sun. A lioness moved silently through this glowing sea, her powerful shoulders swaying, her breath rising in soft clouds. Two tiny cubs followed close behind, stumbling through the tall grass, their fur still damp and fluffy. The world around them was waking, a low murmur of life rising with the sun. Far on the horizon, zebras grazed in pale mist, and a chorus of weaver birds wove bright notes into the cool morning air. For now, everything was safe. The lioness paused, scanning the savanna with sharp golden eyes. She listened, to the wind, to the distant grunt of wildebeest, to the hush of the river that wound somewhere beyond the hills. She could sense the boundaries of her world, where grass met forest, where light met shadow. That line, that invisible border of safety, was where she stopped. She gave a soft growl, a signal for her cubs to stay close. One of them, smaller but bolder than his brother, tilted his head toward the forest edge. A butterfly, a flicker of blue wings, floated in the air before him, glowing like a living jewel. The cub froze, mesmerized. Then, ignoring his mother's call, he began to follow. The grass brushed his belly as he crept forward. The butterfly drifted lazily ahead, leading him farther from the open plain. Sunlight shimmered on his whiskers as he stepped closer to the tree-line, where the air grew still and cool. He had never felt shade before, not like this. A world where the light broke into soft fragments, filtered through leaves. Behind him, his brother hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. The lioness turned her head too late. When she realized one of her cubs had vanished, her low rumble of warning rolled through the air like distant thunder. But by then, the cub was gone. Inside the forest, the world was different. The air smelled of earth and moss and ancient wood. Shafts of morning light cut through the canopy, painting the ground in stripes of gold. In that quiet, deep green world, a troop of gorillas was already awake. Mothers sat in circles grooming their young, pulling leaves from one another's fur. Infants climbed low vines and swung from branches, shrieking in play. The forest echoed with soft grunts, the sound of rustling leaves, and the hum of insects. At the center of it all sat Baruti, the silverback. His fur shimmered with streaks of silver that caught the morning light, and his massive hands rested gently on his knees. Around him, life moved in rhythm, calm, ordered, familiar. Yet Baruti did not join in. His dark eyes lifted toward the canopy, scanning. He listened to something no one else seemed to hear, a pause in the birdsong, a faint tremor that shivered through the ground beneath his hands. The forest, usually alive with sound, had gone strangely still that a single fruit dropped from a high branch and thudded softly in the leaves beside him. Baruti's breath slowed. The others noticed and fell silent too. It was only for a moment, but it was enough to change the air, the way lightning changes a sky before a storm. Somewhere, deep within the roots of the forest, something shifted. Baruti looked toward the edge of the trees, toward the light spilling in from the open grasslands. There, movement. Small, golden, and out of place. The cub padded cautiously into the shadows, tail flicking. The ground felt soft under his paws, damp and cool. He sniffed a root, pawed at a beetle, then froze as a branch creaked overhead. The butterfly had vanished now, and for the first time, he felt the press of silence. Behind him, the brightness of the savanna had become a thin ribbon of light. A doorway closing that he mewed softly. A high, uncertain sound that echoed strangely among the trees. Baruti stepped forward, his heavy frame barely making a sound. The troop stayed behind, watching. His nostrils flared as he caught the scent of the cub, unfamiliar, wild. He knew lions. He knew their calls from beyond the forest, the roars that rolled over the grasslands at night. But never this close. Never here. The cub spotted him. He froze. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the tiny lion trembling in the shadow of the great silverback. Two worlds meeting by accident. Baruti's chest rose and fell slowly. His deep brown eyes softened. He made a low rumble, not a warning, but something gentler, a sound of curiosity. The cub tilted his head, trying to understand. His small body shook, but he didn't run. Then, from the plains, the lioness's distant call carried through the air. a sound full of urgency and fear. The cub turned toward it, mewling in reply. He tried to go back the way he came, but a sudden noise stopped him, a deep crack from within the forest. The ground trembled, and a scatter of pebbles rolled down a nearby slope. Somewhere far away, a low, grinding sound echoed, as if the earth itself were shifting in its sleep. Baruti stood tall, scanning the trees. His nostrils flared again. He could feel it, danger coming, but not in the form of predators. Something beneath them was restless. The cub stumbled, startled by another crack, and retreated instinctively toward the silverback's legs. The air thickened. Even the insects seemed to stop buzzing. Baruti looked down at the trembling cub and then toward the forest's edge, where sunlight still spilled faintly through the leaves. The two worlds, grassland and jungle, stood divided by that fragile line. For a moment, Baruti wanted to guide the cub back, but something in the earth whispered otherwise. The rumbling grew louder. The silverback pressed his knuckles into the soil, steadying himself, and then, as suddenly as it began, the tremor faded. The forest exhaled. Birds began to call again, cautiously, as though testing the air. The danger had passed. For now, Baruti turned back toward the cub. The little lion blinked up at him with wide amber eyes, breathing hard. Baruti grunted softly, lowering his gaze, and then stepped aside, clearing a small path back toward the light. The cub hesitated only a second before darting forward. His paws splashed through a shallow puddle, his fur streaked with mud, his tail flicking like a flame in the dimness. When he broke through the tree-line, the savanna's golden light swallowed him whole from the shadows. Baruti watched him go. The lioness was already running, a golden blur cutting through the grass, her calls deep and trembling. The cub rushed toward her, tumbling at her feet, and she bent low, pressing her face against his, growling softly in relief. Baruti stood unseen among the trees, the sunlight glinting off the silver on his back. The forest rustled behind him, the troop waiting. He turned once more to the open plains, that vast, glowing world of lions and wind, and then faded back into the green. Silent as mist, the cub nuzzled against his mother, unaware of how close the earth had come to breaking beneath him. And far behind them, deep within the forest roots, something shifted again, faint, distant, and waiting. The sky had already begun to darken. Thick clouds rolled in from the west, folding over the golden plains like bruises spreading across the horizon. The air was heavy, charged with something that made the ground itself seem tense. Every creature could feel it, the impala lifting their heads mid-graze, the elephants pausing mid-step, the wind itself growing restless and deep in the forest. A single lion cub cried out. His voice was thin, almost swallowed by the rising wind, but it carried, high and desperate. Beneath a tangle of rocks and roots, the little cub struggled, his back leg pinned tight beneath a slab of stone. Dust still hung in the air, mixing with rain that had just begun to fall. The hillside above him had given way moments earlier, a sudden tremor, a groan from the earth, and then chaos. Now the forest smelled of wet soil and panic. The cub whimpered again, pawing weakly at the ground. Every movement sent a shiver of pain through his small body. Rain trickled into his fur, matting it flat against his skin. He didn't understand what had happened, only that he couldn't move, and his mother's voice, once close and strong, had become a faint echo across the plains. Thunder rolled like distant drums. The light faded fast. Miles away, the lioness lifted her head. She heard something, faint, buried under the wind, the cry of her missing cub. Her ears twitched, her muscles tensed. She let out a deep, rising call that traveled over the wet grass and into the edge of the trees. But the forest didn't answer. She paced back and forth, roaring again and again, each cry more desperate than the last. But the jungle swallowed her voice whole. She could not enter. The trees were too thick, the undergrowth too sharp. Even a lioness knew her power meant nothing in that dark maze of vines and stone. So she waited at the border, pacing, her eyes fixed on the forest that had taken her child. Inside that same forest, the gorillas had felt the tremor too. When the hillside collapsed, the troop had erupted in panic. Branches snapped as they fled, mothers clutching infants, young males leaping through the trees. The air was filled with noise, shrieks, rustling leaves, the heavy slap of feet on mud. But one gorilla had not moved. Baruti, the silverback, stood in the open rain, his massive frame streaked with water. His breath came slow and steady, though his heart thundered beneath his chest. His eyes followed the falling rocks, the rolling dust, and then, amid the storm's chaos, he heard it, that a sound unlike any other, that a cry, soft, high, trembling. Not the voice of his own kind, not a bird, not a monkey, something smaller, weaker. He turned toward the noise, toward the broken slope now half buried under branches and debris. His troop barked in warning from the shadows, urging him back, but Baruti ignored them. His heavy knuckles sank into the mud as he moved forward, each step measured and slow. Rain poured harder now, thick as ropes. Lightning flashed, turning the forest silver for an instant, and in that brief light, he saw it, a small, golden body, trembling beneath a net of stones and roots. Two amber eyes staring up at him, wide with fear. The cub, Baruti, stopped just a few feet away. His chest rose and fell, his nostrils flaring as he took in the scent. Lion. Predator. The kind of animal that would one day grow teeth sharp enough to kill. But this one was only a child, soaked, whimpering, half buried. His cries came in gasps, weak but steady. Each one pulling Baruti closer. He lowered himself to all fours and approached. His breath came out in slow grunts. The cub flinched, pressing his head into the dirt, but Baruti made no sound of threat. He extended one great hand and brushed away a small branch. The cub whimpered again, another flash of lightning. A louder crash of thunder. Baruti's troop shouted from deeper in the forest, urging their leader to return, to abandon whatever strange thing he was doing. But Baruti didn't move. The sound of their fear faded behind the rain, that he focused only on the small creature before him. Pinned, helpless, eyes wide. Something stirred in him then, something ancient. The instinct to protect, to guard the weak. He could feel it pulsing inside his chest, stronger than reason, stronger than fear. And so he began to dig. The work was slow. Each rock was slick with mud, heavy and uneven. Baruti's muscles flexed as he lifted one stone after another, his thick fingers curling beneath them, his breath rumbling like low thunder. Rainwater ran down his arms in dark rivers, mixing with the dirt. Every time a stone shifted, the cub gave a startled cry, and Baruti would pause, waiting for the little one to still before continuing. The hillside groaned above them, sending pebbles rolling past his feet. The silverback ignored it. He worked with the same focus he'd used to protect his own young at last. Only one large rock remained, the one crushing the cub's back leg. Baruti crouched low beside it, planting both hands against the cold surface. He growled softly, a sound of effort, not anger. He pushed. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, with a deep, cracking sound, the rock shifted. Baruti heaved again, harder this time, his body trembling with strain. The stone rolled free, thudding into the mud. The cub cried out, a sound halfway between pain and relief. He tried to rise, but his injured leg trembled beneath him. Baruti reached out, steadying him with one wide hand. Careful, almost tender. The cub froze again, breath fast and shallow. Rain beat down on both of them. They stayed like that for a long moment. Predator and protector, both trembling, both alive. Lightning lit the forest again, framing the two figures in blinding white. The cub's golden fur shone against Baruti's black, both covered in mud and rain, both breathing hard. The storm howled around them, but neither moved. In that instant, the line between fear and mercy blurred. Finally, Baruti rose. He looked toward the trees where his troop waited, silent now. The cub, weak and shivering, tried to crawl forward, dragging his hurt leg. Baruti stepped aside, clearing the path toward the edge of the forest. The cub looked up once, their eyes meeting again, one deep brown, one glowing amber. Baruti grunted low, a sound of permission. The cub hesitated, then limped forward, vanishing slowly into the sheets of rain. When he was gone, Baruti stood alone in the clearing, surrounded by the wreckage of the hillside. His breath came slow and tired. The rain softened, falling lighter now, almost gentle. Behind him, his troop began to emerge, watching him from a distance. None dared approach. Baruti turned his gaze toward the plains beyond the trees, toward the faint echo of a lioness's call. He listened for a moment longer, then lowered his head and disappeared into the shadows. Swallowed once more by the jungle, the rain eased. The last drops slid down broken leaves and into the soil where two sets of prints lay side by side, one massive, one small. The forest held its breath again, not in fear this time, but in awe. The storm had passed, but the forest was still trembling. Broken branches hung like torn cloth from the trees, and the ground was slick with mud and scattered leaves. Mist rose from the earth in soft ribbons, wrapping the jungle in a silver calm after its violent rage. Every sound seemed gentler now. The distant drip of water from the canopy, the low hum of insects daring to sing again. Beneath a fallen fig tree, the cub stirred weakly. His fur was matted with dirt, his breath shallow but steady. Nearby, Baruti sat motionless, his broad shoulders rising and falling as he watched over the small creature. His black fur glistened under the faint morning light, each drop of water catching the sun like liquid glass. Around him, the forest began to breathe again, but his eyes never left the cub. The gorilla had not slept. All through the night, he had stayed close, warding off the cold rain and the faint, hungry cries that echoed from far-off predators. The storm had left its mark: fallen trees, cracked earth, frightened hearts. Yet here, in this quiet hollow, there was peace. When the first rays of dawn spilled through the mist, Baruti lifted his head. He could hear something faint, carried by the wind, a low, rolling call that made even the birds fall silent. It came again, longer this time. A lion's call, deep, rhythmic, trembling with worry. The cub's ears twitched. His small body tensed, and he raised his head for the first time since the collapse. There it was again, his mother's voice. Faint, but certain, Baruti turned toward the sound. The forest ahead was dense, thick with vines and roots slick from rain. Beyond it lay the open savanna, her territory, her world. For a long moment, the gorilla simply listened. He could sense the lioness's desperation in each echoing roar. She was searching, calling through the labyrinth of trees, her voice filled with fear. The cub tried to move but stumbled, his legs trembling under him. Baruti watched quietly, then leaned forward. With a soft grunt, he nudged the cub's shoulder, urging him gently toward the sound. The cub blinked, confused at first, then took a small, hesitant step. Mud squelched beneath his tiny paws. Another roar came, closer now, and something in the cub's eyes brightened. Hope. Baruti followed behind, slow and watchful, pushing aside branches as the cub made his way through the maze of roots and leaves. Every now and then, he paused to look back, making sure the small lion was still upright, still moving. His large hands brushed the ground beside the cub's paw prints, one massive, one tiny, side by side in the soft mud. Then, through the trees ahead, a golden flash moved between the shadows. The lioness. Her muscles rippled beneath her wet fur as she pushed through the undergrowth, eyes wild with panic. She let out another call, and this time the cub answered, a weak, rasping cry, but enough. Baruti stopped. He stood back in the clearing, watching. The cub stumbled forward again, his tiny body disappearing between the ferns. But before vanishing completely, he turned. Their eyes met one last time through the drifting mist. For a heartbeat, the world was stilled up. Baruti's dark eyes softened. In them lived the memory of the night before, the storm, the fear, the desperate will to save a life that was not his own. The cub stared back, his golden eyes reflecting the dawn's light. Between them passed something beyond words, not gratitude, not curiosity, but recognition. As if both creatures understood that, for a moment, they had shared the same heart. Then, the forest broke open with movement. The lioness burst through the ferns, her breath heavy, her eyes locking onto the tiny figure ahead. A sound escaped her, half roar, half sob, as she leapt forward and swept her cub into her mouth, lifting him gently by the scruff. Baruti stepped back, half hidden by the shadows. He did not move or make a sound. The lioness didn't see him at first. She was lost in her relief, her instincts driving her to safety. But as she turned to leave, she paused. For a moment, her golden eyes flicked toward the darkness beneath the trees, and there, she saw him. They looked at each other across the clearing, mother and protector, predator and primate, two forces born from the same earth. The rain still clung to the air between them. Catching the morning light like strands of silver, she blinked once. Her gaze steady but calm, then turned and vanished into the golden horizon, her cubs safe against her chest. Silence followed. The forest seemed to exhale, as if the entire world had been holding its breath. The birds began to sing again, softly at first. The sun slipped higher, painting the leaves in streaks of gold and green. Baruti lowered his massive head, the tension in his shoulders easing at last. He turned toward the trees, where his troops' distant calls floated through the mist. They had fled when the storm broke, retreating to the higher ridges where it was safe. Now, they were calling for him, their voices filled with the calm rhythm of morning. Baruti moved slowly, each step sinking into the soft earth. Behind him, the trail of paw prints and handprints led back toward the clearing, small signs of a story no one else would ever see. A drop of rain slid down his cheek, catching in the fur like a tear, then fell into the mud below. As he disappeared into the forest, the light around him grew warmer. Sunbeams cut through the branches, touching the ground where the cub had lain. The jungle seemed to glow from within, washed clean by the night's storm. In the distance, the lioness's roar echoed one last time, softer now, no longer filled with fear. Baruti paused, glancing toward the sound, then continued his path. His broad back faded into the green haze until only the mist remained. The forest, once torn by thunder and panic, now shimmered with peace. The air was rich with the scent of wet soil and new life. A gentle wind stirred the leaves, carrying whispers of what had happened. The story of a gorilla who had chosen compassion over instinct. And somewhere in that endless wild, where the savanna met the forest and life circled back to life, the world seemed to remember. In a world divided by fear and instinct, sometimes the wild remembers what we forget: mercy.